Welcome to our first initial committee on Cities 2. I'm Senator Christopher Ryan, Chair of the committee. We appreciate you attending, and we can get started. So as a general rule, 5 minutes for a presentation, 5 minutes for questions after.
Sounds good. And I just ask that you be a little liberal that 5 minutes, but I think we can keep it around there.
Well, how liberal?
Like a minute or two.
Another minute?
Maybe.
Well, listen, how's this? We'll see how, we're going to see how you're doing.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Tap the table and I'll expedite it.
Okay.
Chairman, could I introduce him very briefly?
Please.
So Jesse Sommer, also known as the Sheriff of Lark Street, business owner and Army veteran, is also published, seen a lot of the comprehensive plans and money that New York State has thrown at this small city, at Albany, New York, has published 6 pillars for governance, considering comprehensively a number of different ways that the money and the policy that we push from Albany and how that actually impacts the community where he lives. So not just because he's local and it's a little bit more convenient to call him here than somebody from one of my 5 small cities, but he's also got a pretty good mind for policy, and I thought we'd benefit greatly from hearing him today.
Sure. Well, we always want to hear from people, New York citizens.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
the platform, sir. All right, so I'm going to read this statement, but I can make it available for introduction, and there's also going to be copies of that column provided. To the extent that you're willing to dedicate 15 minutes to reading my screed, I'd be grateful.
Actually, I did read yours. I'm a
Thank you.
subscriber to the Altamont Enterprise, so thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Senator Walsick, for inviting me to address this committee. You in particular have just validated a performative and deliberately bombastic social media strategy that I've employed in the past 2 years to amplify my voice beyond what would otherwise be its organic reach. So I'm grateful that you've taken the time to engage my message, and I like to think that my satire resonates with you because we both evidently arrived on planet Earth in the month of July and in the city of Syracuse. Hooah. All right, so my remarks proceed from this Rochester School Facilities Modernization Program Act. On April 3rd, 2025, my hometown weekly newspaper, the Altamont Enterprise and Albany County Post, published my conceitedly ostentatious 6,000-word prescription for the $400 million that our state's executive budget now directs towards Albany's downtown revitalization. Entitled The Albany Plan, 6 Pillars by Which to Guide Albany's Rejuvenation, the column cribbed from the legacy of Ben Franklin's namesake 1754 call for colonial union so as to devise a tactical recipe for deploying these funds. Now, the text of that column makes clear what my speech now obscures, to wit, that the word recipe is an acronym for 6 proposed funding allocations. First of which is rehabilitation of 873 vacant buildings that desecrate our cityscape with dilapidation accentuated by those red and white X signs. Any municipal investment in Albany should focus on restoring existing neighborhoods, not on conjuring new ones, and I'll get to that in a moment. Second, and most pertinent to today's discussion, education, and specifically the augmentation of public school facilities, after-school programs, and faculty compensation. There are others better equipped to comment on the educational and workforce impacts of augmented school resourcing, but my column targeted the nexus between educational resourcing and public safety. In Albany, a lethal mix of accessible handguns and adolescent testosterone inescapably postures the teenage male as both shooter and victim. To quote celebrated local columnist myself, Albany teens as young as 13 are routinely arrested on firearms charges. Worse, many victims of gun violence themselves are barely halfway through puberty, as was the case of the 17-year-old shot about 250 feet where I was writing this column, or the 16s shot on Independence Day at Myrtle Avenue last year, or the 13 and 14-year-olds shot last month mere blocks from the governor's mansion just one day after a 19-year-old was shot several times on Madison Ave, approximately 10 hours after a 21-year-old was killed just a mile and a half up the street. The online version of that excerpt contains embedded hyperlinks so you can check my math. The gist is that New York's public schools and the better angels employed therein aren't just shouldering the burden of molding our youth to compete in this emerging technological dystopia, they also stand in the breach against lethal disorder on the streets. And I'm thrilled that Rochester understands that. I hope broadly across the state, other districts will as well. The other pillars in my recipe are civic services, innovation, preservation, and empathy. With time scarce, I'll focus the remainder of this address on just two of these because I'm disappointed the $400 million that Governor Hochul said would be set aside to rescue downtown Albany has already been seemingly cut in half. So at this point, I want to emphasize that Senator Fahey, you have my vote till the end of time and for any elective office you may pursue. You are an unparalleled public servant, and you've been a champion for the region that we share and I call home. But I'm repurposing your word-for-word plea made to Jeffrey Buell, which he issued in the shadow of Albany's manifestly unsalvageable central warehouse on December 22nd of 2023, where he said, "Tell me this isn't throwing good money after bad." That's what it was. I'd called it so in half a dozen published articles over as many years, and I now beseech the same, specifically of you, that we not let them throw good money after bad or to the wrong people for the wrong things. I hope genuinely I hope New York's $150 million investment in the State Museum produces an immersive experience complete with updated scholarship, state-of-the-art technology, and unparalleled educational value. But as there haven't been lots of new developments in the woolly mammoth community, I wish there'd been a dialogue as to whether perhaps a $250,000 marketing campaign could have sufficed to sustain interest in the existing museum exhibits until other priorities were tackled first, like ensuring the unhoused aren't sleeping in Washington Park's porta-johns overnight throughout the entire winter. I've surveyed this issue. Anecdote reveals that, and something to keep in mind, potentially as part of how we allocate the $150 million for the museum, it isn't the ostensible dusty staleness of the exhibits that depresses museum turnout, but rather the plaza's intimidating subterranean parking complex, the lack of above-ground parking, and visitors' psychological discomfort in confronting panhandlers. Nonetheless, Honorable Fahey, you have my leap of faith. I just ask for yours because as pertains to the remaining $200 million available to revitalize downtown Albany, only one application of funds has any moral justification or practical chance of rescuing Albany, and that's the return of those rehabilitated 873 vacant buildings to the tax rolls with a corresponding pathway to home ownership for low-income tenants, especially those in Albany's historically black neighborhoods, alongside the installation of dispersed intervention resources for Albany's unhoused population. Jeff Buell doesn't need another dime of New York taxpayer dollars, and especially not for the installation of a Liberty Square stadium accommodating New York's fifth most popular sport, which is to say soccer. And I will read a eye roll emoji into the record. Please do not be seduced by his pitch for 1,000 units of new housing, all of which will inure to the benefit of a mega landlord and the transient tenants awaiting better openings in Troy, where The Gilded Age is filmed, as opposed to here in Albany, where 900 buildings await casting for the 6th installment in the Evil Dead franchise. No more monuments. What Albany requires to deploy $200 million is an interagency coordinator, a revitalization czar, to aggregate stakeholders in the city's Department of Buildings, the county's Division of Finance, the District Attorney's Office, the Albany County Land Bank, the Advance Albany County Alliance, and the Capitalize Albany Corporation, to name just a few of these agencies, so that they can enforce the zoning code to include criminally prosecuting absentee property owners where there exists prescribed penal consequence for their neglect, aggressively implement liens and effectuate foreclosures for tax delinquent properties, coordinate the temporary transfer of property title to the county land bank, orchestrate RFPs soliciting bids from local small business contractors to renovate, rehab these buildings, secure requisite permitting and oversee division of structures into cooperative or condominium units, and develop eligibility criteria by which applicants can apply to secure deeds to the buildings. This would then allow us to execute the transfer of clear title to new real property owners, now further incentivized to improve their neighborhoods and secure the value of these awarded intergenerationally transferable assets. Other units in these buildings, not intended for deed awards, could be fashioned into decentralized, dignified housing solutions for those who lack them, to include individualized, open-door sleeping quarters offering shelter from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., along with washing machines, lockers to store belongings, vice schlepping their belongings through the elements in shopping carts, as well as shower facilities to accommodate routine hygiene. Those experiencing homelessness could register for assignment to these pods, which during the day would then convert into offices at which clinical services could be administered. Sending clinicians to intervene on the street was a preposterous strategy when it was proposed and has been a failed one ever since. This approach fixes it. And it's a solution for which these people have asked, following reports of abuse, theft, drug use, prostitution, and crab-in-the-bucket conditions at the centralized city mission and other shelters. So, for those following along at home, I'm currently tumbling through a chaotic, party-unaffiliated campaign for the presidency of Albany's Common Council, and my slogan, performatively, is "Ending poverty is good for business." And the plan I've just outlined, one intended to target blight, forestall gentrification, and give housing to those who lack it, is the only use of $200 million that won't reek of mismanagement and corruption while spewing nonsense from both sides of a mouth that bit off more than it could chew. So thanks for listening. And with Mother's Day just behind us, I just ask for 5-10 seconds in memoriam of my late mother, Dr. Holly Cheever, whose relentless advocacy for the rights of animals is a torch I pledge to pick up as soon as Albany's future is secured.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.